Hey team, welcome back to another On the Couch with My Food Religion. Today I'm joined with the awesome Kirsten and we're going to be talking all about human design. So you guys might have seen a little while ago on Instagram, I shared that I had my human design reading done by Kirsten and it was awesome. I think for me, the thing that I found the best about it was it felt really validating. So many things that I know about myself, but I didn't really know why I did the things I did. And knowing my human design really helped me to just accept that stuff and feel like I didn't need to change it, didn't need to kind of push through stuff that felt really uncomfortable for me, even without knowing why it felt really uncomfortable to me. So we're going to dive into the different types of human design today, and Kirsten's going to share so much knowledge that she has about all of this. So Kirsten, thank you. Welcome to the couch.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk all things human design. I mean, you never never need an excuse to talk about it, but thank you for giving me one.
So I'd really like to start with one of the hard-hitting questions. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
Oh, I had tofu scramble with like a little bit of vegan bacon thrown in there as well, with some kale and like some curry powder, made it like really spicy. A little bit of lemon juice on top. It was delish.
God, sounds like a cafe meal. That's
I know.
amazing.
Yeah.
I had the like a leftover half-eaten cucumber that she gave me, some of her smoothie that she didn't drink, and probably, I don't know, the dregs of somebody else's breakfast as well.
Glorious.
You're a better job than I am.
Yeah.
So could you please start off with explaining what human design is? Because I first heard about this, I can't even remember. I heard somebody else talking about it on a different podcast and I was like, that is so interesting. And then after I did a breathwork session with you, discovered that you also do human design reading. And I was like, this sounds so interesting.
Yes.
So can you please tell us a little bit about what the hell is human design?
Yeah. So human design is a combination between astrology, the I Ching, the Kabbalah, the chakra system, and quantum physics. So there's a little analogy that I like to use to explain what all of that coming together actually means.
Yeah.
And there's a really beautiful movie on the Disney Channel, Disney Network, whatever it's called Soul. And it's this really beautiful little animated movie about incarnation in the afterlife. And there's a scene there where all the little baby souls are standing around a little cutout hole from the afterlife, ready to jump down into the body that they're going to inhabit in that lifetime. And before they jump down, they get this little earth badge, and it's got their strengths, their gifts, their purpose, their personality, all mapped into their earth badge, so that when they land in their body, they've got everything already encoded in them to navigate that life. So human design is your earth badge. It's basically the birth date, time, and place. So it's the unique birth portal that you jump down and incarnated into this lifetime. And when you jump down, you got encrypted with all the neutrinos of where all the planets and stars and everything was in the solar system at that time, which encoded you with a specific set of energetics that you really needed in order to get everything that you came here to get in this lifetime, but also to contribute everything you came to contribute as well. So it's essentially the user manual to your soul, or your soul's blueprint. And it really, like when people say we have everything we need inside of us, it's really true, because we already are mapped in with all of these energetics that make us so individual and unique. And, you know, it's really just a process, I think, of it gives you a framework to really understand yourself and understand that. And then from there, you can also see where you've been conditioned out of that as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I remember when you did mine, there were so many things that I was like, oh, I've always wondered why I did the things that I did, because it's like you have an inner knowing, and it is a little bit, there's certain things about your star signs that you could definitely say, I know that person's a Libra, or I know that person's a Cancer, or there's just certain elements of their personality or the way that they are that you would attribute to those sorts of things.
Yes.
Sign is like that too, but on roids. Like it just a depth understanding of, like you said, your decision-making processes, and the way that, you know, we interact with people or don't interact with people as well, which is so. Would you be able to go through the main types of human design?
Yes. So I It's so funny because I feel like on my readings, I normally take like 20 minutes to explain each type. So I'm still learning how to condense this into like something that is recordable for interviews. But basically, there are 5 human design types, and they're the energy types. And essentially, we have the manifestor, the generator, the manifesting generator, which is actually technically a subclass of the generator, but they operate a little bit differently. And then we've got the projector and the reflector. So if human design is the master system, these energy types are the micro systems. So you kind of fall within the category of one of the energy types, and then your unique energetics kind of give more depth and layers kind of to how you would then specifically kind of work with that energy as well. So running through the energy types, we've got the manifestor, which is what I am. So manifestors are really here to initiate. They're here to kind of bring projects to life, bring movements to life, to initiate, to catalyze projects, new realities, those sort of things. And as such, we have energy that works in ebbs and flow. So we work these big bursts of energies, and then we have like an ebb and a rest energy. So this even just in itself was life-changing to me, because I'd always found this natural cycle within myself that I'd been fighting against, because so much of what we deem to be the way to success is consistency. And for me, these big bursts and then periods of rest was something that I had been resisting. But that's actually my natural cycle, is to almost like a rocket launch. You use up all this fuel and then you come back into a period of rest. So because we're here to kind of initiate and catalyze, and when we are in these big surge energies, we have what we call a closed and repelling aura. And it's not because we're trying to keep people out or we're not nice. It's because we almost need, and I kind of envision the manifestor aura like a little, like, you know, there's little donut rings you like float around the pool. It's almost like I imagine it like that. So we've got this like closed and repelling little buffer that when we decide that it's time to surge and we've got our eyes locked on point B, we're at point A, we've got our goal, and like what we want is the path of least resistance, because we're here to bring that new reality to life, or that project to life, get that thing started, get that movement off the ground. So this closed and repelling aura moves any resistance out of the way. So because we're here to really, initiate, our strategy is to inform. Manifestors really aren't here to be in any kind of permission-based energy. We're really here to basically decide what we want to do and then inform those that it's going to impact, or those around us, what we are going to do. Not request if it's okay if, we're literally just giving people a heads up. So our strategy is to inform people so that they can either get on board if it sounds exciting to them, or get out of the way if it doesn't, so that we can basically just move through, barge everything out of the way like a bowling ball hitting those pins. We're just here to like move through and create that new reality.
Yeah.
So for manifestors, what really sets us apart in the body graph when you look at it is that we don't have a defined sacral center, but we do have a motor connected to the throat. That's how we bring those projects to life, is that motor connects to the throat, and then we manifest or create that reality through that expression. So for manifestors, quite a lot of the conditioning is really coming out of that permission-based energy and really like being in that informing energy, which can be a little bit of a challenge when you first really understand that energetics. And I know a lot of manifestors are like, oh God, like they can really see how they've been met with that resistance. And for me, that was such a huge insight to myself. I had really uncovered human design at a point in my journey where I was like, why is just none of these business strategies really landing for me? Why aren't they working for me? Like all these people that are having success with these specific strategies, why is that not working for me? And it wasn't until I understood my manifestor energy that I really understood why. And it was because a lot of those strategies were response-based, permission-based, like seeking feedback and market research and things like that from our audience, which the manifestors are not here. We're here to kind of rebel, do things our own way, carve out new realities. And so I was actually diluting my magnetism by operating like other energy types. So I think, when we start to kind of unpack these energetics, we can see that each energy type really has its own unique magnetism when we use our strategy. So coming out of permission-based energy and into informing energy was huge in creating like magnetism in my business. And it really started to make me understand like where I naturally, like I was like, oh, those times when I was informing, that's when things worked. And when I was asking or seeking permission, that's when it really didn't. So that's kind of a little brief overview of the, the manifesto.
I even noticed with your social media, you roll with those ebbs and flows of energy and inspiration. As
Mm-hmm.
like, I need to post every single day, or I need to, satisfy the algorithm. For you,
Mm-hmm.
with your social media, is that you will post when you're feeling inspired or pulled to do, and you won't when you don't.
Yeah. And that was a huge leap of trust for me as well, because I had previously gone from doing all the things and like trying to do a weekly newsletter, weekly podcast, like 3 to 4 posts a week minimum, and like all these things to stay consistent. And it found it so challenging. Like sometimes it would come easier because I would obviously be in that surge energy. But when I was in the ebb and the kind of like, that kind of like more kind of that valley energy, it was really challenging. And in hindsight, I can really see, because my whole chart magnifies that energy as well. I'm an emotional authority, which is waves. I'm a 6-2 profile, which is very inwards, outwards archetype. And I can really see how trying to push myself to stay the same and stay consistent was actually so damaging, and also to my confidence as well, because when I was in a lull and I was trying to be like on and outward, I just didn't really want to be seen. I wanted to be hermiting and kind of resting, and I was like, oh, and then I'd start going into comparison mode and just all these things that just weren't healthy to then have the ability to really surge and go again. So in pushing past my rest periods, I was actually like minimizing the surge energy because I wasn't allowing that rest. So even just coming back out of that and realizing that I was so supported even in my rest periods and I didn't need to be on all the time was really powerful.
Yeah. And so how is a manifesting generator different to the manifestor?
So the generator and manifesting generator are the next two kind of little energy types, and both of these are technically generators, and what sets them apart from the rest of us is they have a defined sacral center. So when you pull up your chart, you'll see there's like a little body graph, and that's where the chakra system comes into play. So they've got a defined sacral, which means they have consistent, reliable access to sacral energy, which is almost like the engine in a car. They've got the ability to jump in and turn the key whenever they like. And between the two of them, they actually make up about 70% of the population. So they're the set point for society because they're what we call energy beings. So they've got the energy to essentially work, but there is a huge misconception that they're the worker bees because they have the ability to work. And that's actually completely not true. Both the generator and manifesting generator are actually here to love what they do. And that's really, really, really key, because there are so many generator energy types and manifesting generators I've had reading for that are actually in burnout because they're not doing what they love. So anyone watching this, if you are a generator or manifesting generator, it's so key for you to love what you do, as well as, yes, you can work, great, but you're here to love what you do. And when you love what you do, that sacral center basically becomes activated, and all that joy, that delight, that excitement, that inspiration that you're feeling spills out into your whole body and then comes out into your auric field. And the manifesting generator aura is open and attracting. So they become actually super magnets when they're in their joy. And all of us want to be kind of like, oh, what's that? Like, what's lighting that person up? I want to be a part of it. That's how we then get that energy, and kind of like we kind of piggyback off their energy. And that's why they need to be in their joy to be this set point for society, because when they're loving what they do, it makes an impact as a byproduct. And when their energy is open and attracting and they're that magnet, basically they're pulling life towards them, which is why their strategy is to respond. They're here to really move through life in a very yes-no capacity. Does it feel expansive? And does it feel like, oh, I want to find out a bit more of that? That sounds fun. It's like this yes kind of like expansiveness in the body. Or does it feel like constricting and like, no, that's not for me, or like, I don't want to do that? And basically they're almost here to move through life in that very yes-no capacity, like a little frog jumping on lily pads of joy. They're here to follow the breadcrumbs of joy, because the more that they follow those, the more magnetic they become, the more they attract the people, the opportunities, the jobs, all the things to them, rather than if they're doing what they don't love, then that sacral energy is getting depleted. It's going to feel draining. It's going to feel hard. It's going to feel boring. It's going to be repelling rather than attracting. So the more that they're in that joy energy, the more attracting they become. And then all they have to do is really follow that response energy, leaning more into the expansive, joyful things and away from the things that don't feel good to them. And they're really here to be in response to life, which again, for conditioning purposes, is quite challenging because we're often told you need to go out and get it, make it happen, all these sort of things, not be in response to life, which sometimes mean you can wait a period where there's nothing to kind of respond to. And that's where the generators can come out of alignment, is when they then have nothing to respond to and then they go into push and force mode rather than wait for that next thing to respond to. Because when they kind of come from that true space of expansive response, then they can go, then they can initiate and make anything possible because they've got the energy to be able to do it, because the sacral is telling them, yes, we have the energy for this, let's go. Yeah. But how their energetics really operate a little bit differently is the generator energy has more of kind of like a woodpecker energy. Once they've like had that response and they're locked in on that thing, it's like go, 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 go. They're just like going at that thing that their goal or whatever it is that's bringing them joy. Whereas the manifesting generator's energy, because they're a hybrid between the generator and the manifestor, they still fall in the generator category. But they have a defined sacral, but they also have a motor connected to the throat. So that's what gives them the hybrid. So as such, they've got a spectrum of where their energy will fall between the methodical kind of generator energy and the foot on the gas Ferrari manifest energy. And so their energy kind of operates more like a hummingbird. They kind of are here to float around and be multi-passionate, to be multi-interested, to have all the tabs open, many projects on the go, balls in the air, because they can. And that's actually what brings them more delight and inspiration. Locking in on one thing would feel really constricting to a manifesting generator. So they're kind of like multi-passionate, and they're here to kind of float like a little, like a little hummingbird. They're here to kind of float around their flowers and kind of, be in that cross-pollination process. And they're actually here to inject freshness and, innovation into the collective through these multi-passionate interests, because they can pull all of these things together and create anew. And because they have this open and attracting aura, they can actually respond to multiple pings at once, whereas the generators are really responding to kind of one ping at a time.
Yeah. So Jono is a manifesting generator. It's to me to learn a bit more about that type, because when I met him, he was like, I used to own my landscaping business, and then I was CEO of this resort, and then I did this and I did that. And I'm like, how many jobs have you had?
Yeah.
What the hell, man?
Yeah.
But that's exactly him. He can do so many different things, and he has talent for so many different things. He's like a MacGyver at anything. Like, no, I can do that, can build that, and can do anything. But, like a little while ago, he's like, I think I'm going to go and do an airbrushing course. And I was like, what?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to go and do an airbrushing course. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And for me, I'm like, but what are you going to airbrush? Like, what's the purpose of this? What's the end goal? Like, I want to be an airbrushing artist. Whereas that's just not how his mind works. He's just like, that seems really cool. I'm going to go and learn how to do that. Okay.
Off you go. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Is like a lot of manifesting generators have really been conditioned that they need to lock in and focus on one thing. And like so many readings I've had for manifesting generators, they're like, oh my God, my family always tells me I just need to pick one thing, and I'm too scattered and stuff like that. And it's like, no, actually that's right for them. And for the generators, for them it's really about coming into that space of loving what they do, and out of that space of I guess being rewarded or valued for their productivity or output, and starting to come back into more of a space of like, how much did I love that, rather than how much did I do? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because I think that generator type as well, like you said, they can be that person who is perceived as a workhorse, because they can pushing and pushing and pushing and work 20 hours a day and keep going.
Yes.
That's just that's in their makeup to do that.
Yeah.
Like me, who I'm like, I've got 4 hours of productivity.
You do, yeah.
A lot in that 4 hours, but other than that, I'm no good.
Yeah, exactly. And I, if I'm in a surge, I might work a 20-hour day, but then I also might go like a week with it doing nothing. I guess like it just depends.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So then more types.
So the projector, which is what you are, and our projectors, like you said, that with your 4-hour capacity. The reason being is because projectors have what we call a deep and focused or deep and penetrating aura. So you guys really have a very unique point of view in the collective. You're kind of more the eagle above the field. If we're all going on a hike, you've got this beautiful ability to really see so clearly. You've got a view that we don't really have. You're seeing everything from that bird's eye view. So you've got this ability with this deep and focused aura to actually go into the other in front of you, and you can almost sample and kind of like taste and experience what it's like to be that person, or to like have a little experience of them through this deep and focused aura, which gives you the ability to see things really clearly, to perfect and correct things, to direct the flow of energy, to strategize, to improve things. Very much the projector archetype is really here to be like a visionary, a leader, a guide. You guys can really see things in a way that we can't. And I'm sure that you and many other projectors have probably had a time in their life where they're like, oh, I could have told you that. Oh my God, what are you doing? Like, it's just literally like, you're like, I really am struggling to hold my tongue here because I can see that you could be doing things differently. But basically the projectors, energy is kind of like how the manifestor has the big surges and rests. The projectors is like these little spikes every day, because you're giving so much of whatever it is that's in front of you. And on the other end, there's an absorbing quality. You know, like me as a manifestor, you don't have the defined sacral. And so you really need to almost go into these, you're sort of outputting, and then you need to recharge. Like you'd plug your phone in overnight. The projectors need that kind of daily recharge. And you guys really are not here to be workhorses. Oh, hello, doggy. Is he a projector too? Just really agrees. Not here to be a workhorse. So basically, you're really here because you've got this like deep and focused aura, and there's that absorbing quality. That's why you need to then come back and recharge your energy and not kind of be that workhorse, because otherwise, you know, you're going to end up in burnout. And that's why I think a lot of projectors really struggle, because they're really outputting a lot and trying to keep up with the generators, when you're really here to, again, it's not about the quantity of work, it's about what you can see. And I like to use a little analogy to explain the strategy of to wait for the invitation, because I feel like this is the strategy for the projectors that I think is very misconstrued, and there's a lot of like misunderstandings of what do you mean I have to wait for an invitation? So this isn't about passive waiting. It's not sitting at home on the couch being like, wow, I hope someone invites me to create a project. It's like you're actively waiting. So as a projector, your biggest gift and the ability to receive these invitations is to be visible. So the projector, when they are visible in their gifts, visible in their magic, they're clear on the type of invitations they want to call in, and clear that they get to be recognized in that invitation as well. That's when those invitations will really roll in. When you're visible in your magic, people as a natural byproduct will invite you to be a part of their world. But you can create anything you want in your world. For example, you create your Instagram. You don't wait for someone to be like, hey, can you do a recipe on this? Like, you'll just, do whatever you want. You create. Yes, of course, you might, make things if people request them, and that's an invitation too. But you're not sitting there waiting like, oh God, no one's asked me to cook anything this week. Like, you're actively there creating your own world and your own reality that people can step in, they can opt in, and as a result, they can experience you and your light and your wisdom and extend an invitation. Do you want to collaborate? Do you want to do a product partnership with us? Whatever that might be. Can you do a recipe? Do you want to do a recipe book? Like, these kind of the invitations that might flow in. Or do you want to come on my podcast and my blog, or do a photo shoot? Whatever that might be, from seeing you and being like, oh, she's the go-to on this topic. So for the projector, it's really about being visible, and being visible in the type of in the topic matter of the type of invitations that you want to call in. Now, the analogy I have to understand the energetics of this is because all of the strategies, like I said, are really to create alignment in our life and to create ease and magnetism. So for the projector, because you've got this incredible capacity to see, rather than, I guess, giving that more like for example, if it's like, oh, I could have told you that, rather than giving that unsolicited advice, if someone's not ready to receive that wisdom, then they might get their hackles up. They'll reject your wisdom. You'll feel rejected and like not appreciated, and the little cycle continues. So for the projector, I have this analogy that if you have ever been to a comedy show, if you're sitting like, you end up getting seated like front row or second row, and you're just like, oh my God, I don't want to be a part of the show. I hope they don't call on me. I'm just going to try and make myself invisible. And you're just trying to like blend in and breathe because you just do not want this comedian to call you up on stage. And then, of course, opening act, they're like, you in the red top in the second row. And you're like, shit. And you're just like, no, I don't want to come up on stage. But in the audience, there would have been somebody with their hand up being like, me, but you weren't ready to come up on stage. So when the projector is not using their strategy of the invitation, they're just yanking people out of the crowd. They're pitching, they're initiating, they're soliciting, they're cold calling, they're using a DM strategy. They're like inserting into the world of another, or like yanking people up into the spotlight that aren't ready to receive that projector magic. But if you then flip that energy and that strategy, and you are the spotlight, and you're just shining your light, you're creating, you're sharing your wisdom, sharing your magic, and you are the spotlight shining onto the stage, then you're creating the space for that willing participant to step into the spotlight. So that's how the projector kind of receives those invitations, is if you are the spotlight and people step into the spotlight and they offer you an invitation, they want to work with you, they want to collaborate with you, whatever, then you can say yes or no. You don't have to say yes to every invitation. You can decide, is this going to fuel me or is this going to drain me? Do I feel recognized and seen? Because you damn well get to, because you guys are bloody magic. And then you can choose what invitations to receive from there. It's more that it's just going to feel a bit probably gross. And I'm sure there's many projectors that can relate to that when you're kind of pitching or putting yourself forward. And, I have so many projectors I've done, sessions for that are coaches, and they've had business coaches be like, you just need to pitch yourself a podcast and do a DM strategy and be commenting and, going into forums and stuff. And like, they've not had any results, or they've had rejection or criticism by doing that. And then that makes them shrink and then doubt themselves. Whereas when they, I've got beautiful friends, probably the most successful people I know are projectors. And when they've just been visible and like just done their thing, the invitations have just rolled in, and they have just created like amazing word of mouth businesses.
Yeah. And I think those two of those things that you mentioned were the things that really felt so validating for me. Was firstly that ebbs and flows of like, I've got these short periods of productivity and then I need out. So when I go and run a cooking workshop, I love it. I really love doing those sorts of things. But I also thought that it was probably that I was just a bit of an introvert, that I didn't feel filled up from doing those.
Yeah.
I was trained.
Yeah.
And I found to the fact, well, I'm a bit of a extroverted introvert. Like, I love doing those things. I love helping people. I love giving to people. But I leave a 2-hour workshop and I feel like I need to rock in a corner for on my own. And I don't want to talk. I just want everybody to leave me alone, and I just want to go to sleep.
Yeah.
But for me, it's so validating knowing that that's actually just my human design type. And also invited was... I used to work in animal health pharmaceuticals and visit vet clinics. And I loved when I could just go into a clinic and I could just make relationships and just be that person that people knew they could come to if they had a question. But to go in and pitch at people or be really salesy just felt so repelling to me. And I feel like it was repelling to them as well. Like, it was not a successful sales strategy for me. For me to just go in and have a chat and create relationships and gain trust and wait for people to tell me what it was that they needed that I could help them with, that felt really good. And even now in my business, John will be like, oh, you should just email these people and tell them what you can do for them. And I'm like, oh, that just makes me grow up. Like, that's so repelling to me.
Yeah.
And any time where I have done that cold call approach to business, it's been a complete stonewall. It's been like a no response or a no thank you. And then for me, I'm just like, oh, my soul hurts.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like if I just go about my day and do the things that are lighting me up and, just stay on my path, that's when the stuff, the opportunities come and the invitations come. And like you said, you don't have to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
But there's the opportunities there that are things you're like, oh, that sounds so exciting. Yes, I want to do that.
Yes.
But it's the sort of thing that had I initiated that, it would have never happened.
Yeah.
Because I need people to think that see my value, not necessarily think that I'm great, but I need people to go, yes, no, that would be a valuable relationship, partnership, whatever to have.
Yeah.
Rather than me just going, hey, I'm great. Do you want to work?
Exactly. And I think that that's where, like, it's just about understanding those fine energetics to understand that it's going to feel better when you are approached rather than when you are pitching and pushing, because it's almost like, like you've got a little flashlight, and if you're like, emailing people, you're like shining, they're like, hey, do you want to work with me? Like, it's like they're like, like the spotlight, they weren't ready for it. But it's like, if they came to you, they're ready to step into the spotlight. And exactly what you said about that kind of, when we don't have a defined cycle, even the things that we love will feel draining to us. Whereas for the generators and manifesting generators with their defined cycle, they're actually energized by doing what they love. And if you would attest to this, having a partner who's a manifesting generator, sometimes being around them is like when they're getting fueled up by the exchange and you're like depleting energy, and it's like, I can't keep going on the ride with you, I have to tap out now.
I'll often just go, I've just got to go to bed. And what? I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah, they're like, we're just getting started. It's like, no.
I've been too much to everybody, and now I just need to
Yeah, exactly. And one interesting thing to note about the projector energy as well is that you guys have the widest variety of what that might look like, because you have this the widest potential of different authorities and energy centers activated. It can be anywhere from 2 to 9, so for you, 2 to 8. So really for you, the important thing is like to understand which motors you have activated, because, for example, if you've got your solar plexus activated, your energy might come in like waves, and if it's the root, you'll have kind of short, sharp bursts of energy, or willpower might be like more pulsy energy. So there's different kind of motors that can give you different types of energy, so you can start to work with your unique, how your energy is going to kind of work within those kind of shorter time frames.
Yeah. So then there's one more type, and they're the rarest, aren't they?
The reflector, which is only 1% of the population. So pretty rare to find. I know one reflector in my life. And reflectors have a really beautiful sacred role. So their energy is what we call resistant and sampling. So what sets them apart is they actually have no energy centers defined. So they're completely open. And as such, they are almost like, you can imagine them like a little mirror ball. They're kind of here to absorb the environments and the people and the energies around them, and kind of transmute it and reflect it back and kind of sample it, and have this really beautiful, ever evolving, ever flowing, ever changing kind of experience of the environments that they're in. And because of that, they're really here to have this really beautiful sacred role of reflecting the health and what's working and what's not, back to us as well. So they really have the ability to have almost a completely impartial, they're almost here to be like at the center of society and kind of have this real sage, we'd go to them and be like, what do we do about this? Or what's working about this? Because they have this, so they have this really beautiful ability to kind of see what's really working and be a champion for what's not working, because of their ability to sample the health and the energy around them. Because of that, their environment is key to them. Having a really healthy, nourishing, sustaining environment around them is everything, as well as the ability to really come back into this question is, who am I in this moment, and not trying to be like everybody else. When they're trying to be like everybody else, or really being in those toxic environments, that's going to really rob them of their magnetism and take them out of their sparkly reflector magic. Whereas when they are just being true to who they feel they are in any given moment, and kind of be in the surprise and the delight of the now, and really relish that role of kind of sampling the different energies around them when it's healthy to do so, and then coming back into themselves. So they sample, they come back, sample, they come back. That's when they can really be their full magnetic self. And their strategy is quite interesting. So theirs is to wait a lunar cycle. And I had a reading with a reflector, my only reflector reading that I've done, which is this one reflector that I know. And I was saying to her, like, how to think of this strategy is like, if your friend said to you, hey, can you help me move that rock? And from where you were standing, it just looked like one of those like like geodes or whatever, like how they like cut out. And it's like it looks kind of flat from the front, and you're like, oh yeah, it's just a flat rock. I can help you with that. And then when you get up and you walk around it, it's actually like a meter deep at the back, and it's really heavy, and it's like coarse, and there's sharp bits. And then you're like, oh, actually, I don't know about that. So the reason their strategy is to wait 28 days or wait a lunar cycle is they actually need to almost like walk around that whole rock, or walk around that whole decision, or sample the entire environment in order to be able to receive that clarity, to reflect that back, or to make the correct decision for them. So it's a really, really, really beautiful and very unique and interesting energy type. And yeah, it'll be very rare if you do meet one. Michael Jackson and Sandra Bullock are two celebrity reflectors. But yeah, really, really, really magic.
So interesting. Do you feel like there's any specific jobs that certain types tend to have? Like
I would say I wouldn't say necessarily types of jobs, because then when you go into the chart and you kind of layer down, I think that's where you can start to really see what people are really here for and their specific kind of energetics to what would make sense for them job wise. But I would say there's a few things where I would say that like manifestors, like really either need to be their own boss or in a very autonomous role in order to feel fulfilled. And then, like I said, really having the manifesting generator to kind of have either the flexibility of bouncing around different projects, or even like freelance roles that are shorter contracts, or the ability to kind of move on. And obviously generators and manifesting generators kind of loving what they do. And then the projector, if they're in an environment where they're recognized and can provide guidance, beautiful. And then if we can give reflectors the ability to really, change and evolve and create that kind of, almost like a, like the finance officer that's like, making sure that we're all getting paid fair in the workplace. Like, they kind of have that more like, that more like sacred role of like, okay, we need to just balance things out a bit, or this isn't working, that's working, let's do this. So they kind of have more of that like, sage kind of role.
Yeah. So we also looked at Grace's human design chart when you did my human design.
And she was almost the same as you.
Same as me. There was a couple of different things that she had open, and
centers, we were a little different. Yeah.
Both very, very similar, weren't we?
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. And I think it also just helped me to realize, some of the things that she does, even at this age. It kind of helped me to understand the flows of her energy.
Yeah.
And she's a really like social kid and quite a confident kid. But, there'll be certain times when we'll get to the park and there'll be other kids, and I'm like, well, why don't you just go and ask those kids if they, if you can play with them? And she'll be like, no. Okay, why not?
Because she wants an invitation.
But give her 5 minutes of going and playing by herself. People are drawn to her and they'll come and ask her to play, and she's gone, she's off, and then she's at the playground, 5 minutes later. But it's like she needs that invitation.
Yeah.
At such an early age, you can just see those little things.
What's really fascinating, I think parenting through the lens of human design is so powerful, because really, before we are conditioned away from our inherent self, that's when, for example, you witnessing that, like she's already doing her strategy because that's what she knows to be best. Even if she can't label it, she already innately knows that she would prefer an invitation. Whereas this is where our conditioning comes into play, is if we're not aware of that. And now that you know that, for example, whereas some other environments might have pushed her to be like, no, I want you to go over and ask that little boy, like just go up, and you think you're doing the right thing because you're like, oh, I'm helping you be brave in this situation, and like in life you're going to have to go and speak to people. You like think you're doing the best thing, but actually the best thing is to just let her play on her own and gravitate, like to let those people. So it's not until you kind of understand that, and I heard this fascinating little podcast about parenting through human design, and the lady was saying, because there's a part in your chart, there's a few little parts that are specifically would be really powerful for kids. One is there's different environments that we all thrive in, but to understand your kids' environments and also their nutrition, so how they digest food as well. And yes, obviously that's important for us as adults too, but to support kids in their natural environment and how they we can support their nutrition is obviously going to support them to thrive as well. And she was talking about how her child had there's like lots of different ways, and the nutrition isn't what to eat, but it's like the environments we should eat in, or the temperature of food and stuff like that. So it's not specific for food. But for her son, it was high sound. So she had grown up in a household where it was polite to sit at the table, manners, you don't have elbows on the table, you're quiet, you turn the TV off, all those sort of things. And because there was no sound, her son was fidgeting and would get really anxious eating at the table, and she'd be like, buddy, you need to calm down, like blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't until she like learned human design, she understood that actually a high sound environment is actually going to support his nutrition, that then they were able to create a bit more movement sound, and that actually supported him to be able to stay focused on eating his meals. And she was even talking about how I can't remember specifically which one this is, but there's one where it's like kind of like simple is best. And she was talking about how an example of that for kids would be like if the child unpacked their sandwich because they don't want the complication of having all the things in one go. They need to eat one thing at a time. And she was saying then, for example, conditioning would look like coming over and no, we eat the sandwich all together and putting it back together. But that child innately knows, and when I eat it separately, that's going to support me. But like they don't have a label for it. But then they're conditioned that they have to eat their sandwich all in one piece, and then they're actually not supporting their own digestion. So being observing, I think, of our children. And she was talking about how I think that she was kind of saying that we're kind of like often parenting on what we missed out on as children, like, and trying to give them that rather than looking at the child in front of us. And I think when you can understand human design, it gives you a bit of a framework to look at the child as their own individual with their own needs and how to support them, even with decision making. You don't understand how your kids make decisions, you can kind of support them to build trust with that as well. So yeah, it's such a powerful parenting tool.
So G has that simple thing in hers as well, and she likes all of her food separate. So she likes a picnic plate. If she could have anything, it's a picnic plate. She wants her tomatoes here, and then her cucumber there, and then her carrot there, and then her meat. Like, she likes things to be separate, and she's very adventurous with food. She will pretty much try anything. She doesn't like things with sauce. So you give her like a bolognese or something, it's like her worst nightmare. She in that bolognese sauce with the pasta separate, but put it all together, she's just like, no. Doesn't like it all together. She likes things separate, which is really, really interesting. So yes, I think knowing your kids' human design can be really interesting, but it also to see why they're naturally following an intuition about something as well. That they like, or why they do the things that they do. And I noticed G's energy as well. Like, she'll be super outgoing and she'll want to run around and have a great time at the park, but then she'll come home and she'll basically get her stuffed toy, her thumbs in her mouth, and she just wants to like sit and watch a movie or lie down and have a sleep. Like, she just needs that. She's just like, oh, and it's so interesting. But then also knowing Jono's just makes so much more sense. Is how he is, because I'm often like, how are you doing so many things at once? I just like you can't, you just do one thing at a time. And he's like, no, I can do all of these things. And I'm like, no, you can't. No one can do all of things.
Yes, but they can. Yeah, and for you though, because you've got the deep, and you're locked in one thing. Like, you're locked in, like, so deep in there, like. And so I think even for me, like, understanding my energy as a manifestor, like even just little things, like I'm not meant to ask comment boxes, like what do you want to learn from me, which is so aligned to basically all the other energy types. But if I'm saying what do you learn from me, that's actually a permission-based energy. So just understanding things like that, I think even thinking about myself as a manifestor child, I'm like, my God, my poor mum, I was just so like headstrong. And actually it's so funny, I've spoken to so many manifestors, and I only clicked when someone gave me this example, and I was like, wow, we would have been the worst to play with as children. But she was like, oh my God, yeah, when I was a kid, I would just like direct everyone, like, when we're playing Barbies, you're going to say that next, you're going to be this character, you're going to do that. And I was like, oh my God, that was me. And I used that as an example for another lady. She's like, that was me too. I was like, oh my God, it would have been such nightmares to play with, but that's our kind of role. We're literally like, imagine manifestors are in the director's chair, directing, like, yeah, we're going there, we're going there, we're going there. So it's like I remember, oh my God, my poor cousin, I almost need to like write her a formal apology, because like so many times about, you're going to say that next. This is the plot line today. I'm having the best Barbie. That's for you. Like, I think I actually got into trouble in school as well, because I created like a club and then it got disbanded and stuff like that. But it's like, I was literally just being a manifestor. Just let me do my thing. I'm creating a club.
Like that, I need my minions to do like the details, because
Yeah.
I've got the idea.
Yeah.
Let's just do that.
I'm directing. Just let me direct.
Yeah.
No, so funny.
So good. So if people wanted to find out what their human design is, you can basically just like jump on a website, and you need to know the time and place of your birth, don't you?
Yeah,
like
birth date, time and place. Yeah, and you can go on Jovian Archive is a really good one, just to pull up your body graph, and you can pull it up and find out your energy type, and obviously do all of your own research. Human design is like a very complex little web. Definitely if you do decide to pull your chart, it'd probably be like, what the hell is this? So that's why if you do want to go deeper, I obviously would recommend a reading, just to help unpack and kind of skim that first layer off. And then once you've got that kind of general understanding and what's happening in your body graph, it's then kind of easier to go off and do more research and go down the rabbit hole from there.
Definitely. So I just jumped on the website and worked out what I was, and I was like, oh yeah, that's interesting. And it gives you an overview of your human design type. But when you actually look at that graph, you're like,
yeah. I sent a screenshot of my friends to her the other day, and she wrote back and she said, what is this secret code?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. So I think it's really actually have a human design reading to help somebody actually nut out what all of those things mean, and then also how they're relevant to you as a person. Like, even if I'd sort of tried to decode my whole body graph myself, and even just the having to have people invite me to things, if I didn't have you to really explain to me what that might look like, it probably wouldn't have resonated so much with me and made so much sense.
Totally. I think the human design language can be very clunky and kind of difficult to unpack. Like, even if you just Google like the gates or channels, like the descriptions, you're like, huh? Like, I often, when I'm doing a reading, actually takes me about between 1 and 2 hours to prepare for each reading, because I'm literally just sitting there being like, how would I explain this to it? It's like, I kind of need to like contextually think of like a comprehensive kind of like understanding of what that actually looks like, make it more palatable, like in real life terms. So that's why I've come up with so many of my own analogies to kind of explain and give visuals for what that kind of, and make it simple, because it's all just about energetics. And obviously we are all energy. So it's like, what's going to create the most magnetism in your life? How is the best use of your energy? What are you really here to contribute in terms of your energy? It's just about understanding those energetics to kind of create the most magnetism in your life possible.
And I think it can be really useful for people who feel like they're in a funk. Like, if you just feel stuck in this funk, or you're stuck in a job that just doesn't light you up, doesn't bring you joy, and you just feel like you're going through the motions and plodding through life and just not really living your purpose, someone's not going to have a human design reading with you, and you're going to go, okay, so what you need to do is be a
teacher. Yeah. It doesn't tell you what you're specifically here to do, but it does tell you what your strengths are, what you're here to learn in terms of a course load for this lifetime. And then also our course load is also how we're here to impact and influence. But it also gives you 4 key energetics that no matter what you do in life, these are probably going to be the driving force. So it kind of gives you a bit of an understanding. What's your strengths? What's your gifts? What are you here to contribute? How are you here? Like, what energy are you here to bring? And it's interesting because then you can see, like, even if I reflect back on like past projects, I'm like, oh, even though that wasn't really it for me, there was still a lot of that energy there. And like, it's just about kind of, I think, narrowing down. But so many people, I think, when I have done the reading, if they have already like started their own thing, or they've started a business, or they're doing a job, or even if they're doing a job, they're thinking about doing something else. It's interesting because like almost everyone, whether they're it's actually so in alignment. Like, and it's like those little callings of like, I've always kind of wanted to do this. So, I'm doing this, but I want to actually do this. And like their chart is so in support of the thing that's on their heart. So it's really cool. I think it's not necessarily, I'm sure you can relate. It's not necessarily like, whoa, this is like groundbreaking, but it gives you a contextual framework to be like, oh, that's why I do that. And that's why I like, and that's why I hate doing that. Like it like actually gives you an understanding to accept yourself and to embrace your individuality rather than fight against yourself to fit into a societal box.
And work out what it is that you can do. And it might not even be changing your job. It might just be the way in which you manage your workflow in that job so that you feel
totally
like just better in that role. And I think as well, it's for relationships. It's helpful to know what your partners is, your kids, people who are, the people that you spend the most amount of time with, understanding their energy type and why they are the way they are.
Yeah.
Understanding just it helps us so much, doesn't it? Like it helps us to be a bit with certain things, or also just to realize that they're not being, like in Johnny's case, he's not being scatty by doing all of that. That's what he's here to do. He's here to do all things, different things, and just because he feels like it, not because he's going to be an airbrush extraordinaire, just because he's like,
exactly.
I'm going to learn something new. I'm like, hey, cool.
Yeah. Totally. Exactly. And even like, if you had a manifestor partner, you would understand when they were informing you that they like weren't like leaving you behind, or like, that they weren't, not interested or whatever. There was like so many things. I think those misunderstandings can be resolved through understanding each other's frameworks and be like, oh, she's informing, she's doing anything, that's okay, I'll just get out of the way. And it's like, even like, if you, like for me as a manifestor, like understanding that other people are waiting for something to respond to, or whatever, it's like not everyone's gonna initiate and want to go up. It's like I have to like, also understand that kind of flow of energy too, so we can kind of support each other to be our own individuals rather than being like, nah, don't do that, like, like just pick one thing. It's like we can just stop doing that to each other as well. And now
exactly. So could you please tell people where they can find you if they want to do human design, if they want to do some breath work when we get out of this beautiful lockdown, all those sorts of things? How can they touch base?
So easiest way is either through the website, which is just kirstenmorrison.co, and there's a link to log on and book a breathwork session or book a human design reading in there. And then if you want to have a chat about either of those as well, there's a little contact form, or you can reach out to me on social media, which is at kirstenmorrison.co. I spend most of my time on Instagram, very rarely anywhere else. So Instagram's your best bet, or the website.
The links below. Also, I've done a couple of breathwork sessions with Kirsten and they were just amazing. There's something so special about having somebody guide you through breathing. And it brings up so much stuff, even without having a conversation about it. It brings up so much stuff, but releases it. So I feel like it's such a great option for people who don't want to talk out what's going on, or they might not even know what's going on. They might just be feeling overwhelmed or stressed or anxious or whatever, and they don't necessarily want to dive into it. But having somebody guide you through breath work, I think, helps you release that stuff without having to sit there and talk through your childhood trauma. You can just help it to get out.
But I think as well, like even just to kind of, it's interesting because I've had so many people either book a human design reading, then book a breathwork session, or the other way around. Like everyone's quite interested in both, because ultimately they are both empowering us to be ourselves, and breath clears out, any experience, belief, or any parts of anyone else out of your being and out of your energy and out of your cells, which allows you to be in more alignment to yourself. And even for me, I was scared to use my voice, and when I started to do breath work, it actually changed my voice. Like I went from permission-based insecure quiver to being able to confidently use my voice. So there's things in there which I think, again, energetics, they kind of do walk hand in hand to be able to do both. So I have had a lot of crossover, and I am actually in the process at the moment of creating a program that's going to kind of fuse the two worlds together. So that will be fun too.
Cool. Awesome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming along and joining me. I'll make sure I pop all of the relevant information to touch base with Kirsten below. And I highly recommend getting some breath work in with her when you can again, and also getting your human design chart done. It's so interesting and so validating. I highly recommend.
Yeah.
Guys, next time.